and we'd like to start our agenda with an open discussion. Item 1 on our open agenda items is the deputization of 2 Washington University Police Department officers and 1 Lambert Airport Police officer. Commissioner Gertner.
Thank you. Raise your right hand, please. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I'm a citizen of the United States, that I will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States,
and the laws of the United States,
the state of Missouri,
and the state of Missouri,
and the charter and ordinances of St. Louis County.
and the charter and ordinances of St. Louis County.
That I will faithfully adhere to the regulations
That I will faithfully adhere to the regulations,
providing the rules and procedures of deputization
preserving the rules and procedures of deputization
as adopted by St. Louis County.
as adopted by St. Louis County.
And that I will faithfully demean myself
That I will faithfully demean myself
as a deputized officer
as a deputized officer
of St. Louis County Police.
of St. Louis County Police.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Let me just read this to you. As a deputized officer of St. Louis County, your authority is restricted to the protection of persons and property on the Washington University campus. As a deputized officer of St. Louis County, you are restricted to the protection of persons and properties at Lambert St. Louis International Airport. Congratulations and thank you for your service.
Thanks.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is a crime statistics update.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I'm going to share my screen here with you. The statistics so far this year from January and February, what I want to point out is that we are fully involved with the NIBRS system now. We started it in 2020, so our statistics from 2020 will be very easy to compare to 2021 because we've had a full year under the NIBRS system. So it should be quite a bit more accurate than last year when we were trying to compare 2 different types of statistics. On this first slide, what I wanted to point out, first, can you see the slide, Commissioner?
We cannot see your screen.
Okay. There, can you see that one?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
What I wanted to point out is the numbers are very similar from last year to this year. We've had a couple things that went down. The victims of the gun crimes are down just slightly. Our citizen complaints are about the same, just up by 1 compared to last year. Internal investigations are the same. Use of force is down just slightly. The department accidents are pretty close. They're up just slightly. But the one I wanted to point out here is the vehicle pursuits. It took quite a jump from 2020. And what we're comparing that to is the our real-time crime center has been putting out a lot of real-time crime data, and it's allowing the officers to be there more quickly to the scenes of the felonies. And I think they're getting probably in a few more pursuits due to that reason, because they're basically coming to the area so much quicker and jumping on the suspects that are fleeing the area. Crimes against persons. As you can see here, our murder homicide shows zeros for January and February, but I wanted to point out that these numbers are taken from our CARE system, and they only show up when the reports are approved. So I talked to Lieutenant Longworth up in Crimes Against Persons. We've actually had 7 homicides in January and 4 in February to give us total for 11 so far in this year. And if you use that number of 11 for 2021, it's up slightly from 2020, up by 5 homicides. The rest of the other numbers are pretty comparable, a little bit of downturn so far in the year. but about average what we're looking at. Our crimes against property numbers, we've seen a little bit of an uptick from February to January. A lot of the crimes that under NIBRS you'll see are broken down into a lot of subcategories: shoplifting, theft from the building, theft from a motor vehicle. A lot of those used to be classified just under larcenies. Now with the new NIBRS system, they're breaking them down so we can get a more accurate reading on exactly what specific type of crime is going on, and hopefully we can put together some plans to combat those when we see huge jumps. This slide, the crimes against society, I wanted to note that the drug arrests, drug violations have seen a steady increase. As we went through last year with the COVID, our drug unit really wasn't going out and doing a whole lot just because we didn't want to have anybody getting exposed to the community until we could kind of get a handle on the virus. But you can see they're having a steady incline from month to month over the last 4 months. And they are back fully 100% functional right now. So we're probably going to see a lot of that continue on, especially as we get into the warmer units, or I'm sorry, the warmer months of the seasons. Our directed calls for service are still about pretty average. February was kind of a cold month, so you can see a lot of our radio calls and directed calls went down from January. Again, as we get into warmer months, both our directed calls of service and our self-initiated calls for service probably start going up as we get into the warmer summer months, but it's about average so far what we're seeing this year compared to last year. Does anybody have any questions on any of that?
No.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I do have a question on the vehicle pursuit information.
Yes, ma'am.
Are we tracing what happens with each of those pursuits and how they end?
Yes, ma'am. The Bureau of Professional Standards keeps track on all those pursuits. A supervisor has to respond to the scene at the end of the pursuit and prepare a administrative report that gets sent into the Bureau of Professional Standards, and those are reviewed by that office to make sure they're within policy.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
None.
Okay, thank you for the report. Next, we'll hear a budget update.
Good morning. We just finished the 2020 budget year. We closed out the books at the end of February, and our revised budget was $147,416,000. We spent $146,127,000, which left us spending 99.1% of the budget and leaving us with $1,288,784 unspent. The 2021 budget's still very early in the game to give a lot of detail. We tend to try to give a first quarter report. So once we get another payroll process in there, which is the biggest part of our expenses, I'll be able to give you some numbers on that. And that's all I've got. Does anybody have any questions? I think you're muted.
Thank you. I was considering to myself how many minutes it would take for me to start speaking without unmuting myself during this meeting. Have we given consideration or thought about potential federal funds that could be coming in? Is that part of this budget process, or is that on top of?
Yeah, that would be over my head. That would be the Vicki Frederick is the Chief Financial Officer. She has the plans for that, for what we're going to spend. They've not given me any guidance. The chief may have gotten some, but I have not heard anything about what that money is going to come to our department. I haven't heard anything on that.
Sure. Okay. So we're moving ahead, planning as though nothing is going to come in.
Right. This was the budget that was established last year. So, and that, is what we're working off of right now. And I guess as things unfold, if we are given money to spend, that will be at your discretion and the chief's
Thank you. Any other questions?
Okay, thank you.
Next on our agenda is an item called or titled CPE Report. And we have Michael Burbank here with us from CPE to discuss this report, which came out and which I understand the department is going to publish today as part of this meeting, and it will be available, if not now, immediately or shortly thereafter. So Michael, we appreciate you being here with us to discuss this report, how it came about, and what exactly it means.
Great, Commissioners. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here to present on the city report to you. I'd also like to thank the chief for the invitation to come present in front of you as well. I will really quickly just share my screen here, and I have a few slides we'll walk through. Okay, is everybody seeing my screen?
Yes.
Always the trick, right? So the Center for Policing Equity is a research think tank that was founded by Dr. Philip Atiba Goff and Dr. Tracy Cpe. We partner with law enforcement agencies to look at racial disparities in policing and strategize on how we can impact those and reduce those numbers. So the Center for Policing Equity partnered with the St. Louis County Police Department to analyze department's policing practices from 2016 to 2018. Our National Justice Database project collects police data, measures fairness and improving police equity, applies a rigorous analytic framework to examine equity in police contact, and then we share our findings with our partner agencies and encourage our partner agencies to share the findings with their communities. This report reflects CPE's commitment to the partnership with agencies like the St. Louis County Police Department to create systems that use data to illuminate opportunities to change how policing is delivered to different communities. Our hope is that informed by the NJD analysis and recommendations, partners will chart a path toward better practices that are consistent with their values and the values of the community that they serve. We had three overall goals for this project. One was to examine whether some racial groups in St. Louis County experience more frequent or more burdensome police contact than other groups. The second was to identify factors that contribute to any existing racial disparities and the extent to which these factors can be influenced by the St. Louis County Police Department. And finally, we provide recommendations for actions that the department can take to address any of the disparities that were identified during the study. While findings of racial disparity are always a reason for concern, they're not wholly attributable to the decisions or practices of law enforcement. In other words, observed racial disparities do not necessarily indicate that an officer has prejudiced beliefs or that they have engaged in discriminatory behavior. Crime, poverty, institutional neglect, and a host of other factors can influence and drive police disparate contacts. These factors don't mean that disparities are not a concern, just that those seeking to address the concern must focus on all of the factors that we mentioned above, and including police practices and behaviors. So some of the key findings in this report, and the study of from 2016 to 2018, black-white disparity in vehicle stops over that time declined, which is a promising thing. There was stops on what the share of stops for white persons increased by 6%, and while the percent for black persons decreased that same amount over that time. However, there were also some flags that were raised and things that require further investigation on the part of the department to address. During the 2016 to 2018 period, Black drivers were more likely to be stopped per capita than drivers of any other race. 6% of drivers who were stopped, of Black drivers who were stopped, were arrested, as compared to 4% of white drivers and 3% of other categories. Black male drivers who were stopped were searched at almost twice the rate of white drivers. Yet the yield rates on those searches, so in other words, the finding of actually contraband, was about the same for both groups. Black individuals were more than 3 times as likely to experience use of force than white persons, adjusting for population size and demographics. We also conducted a multi-level regression analysis, and that looks at like some of those other factors that are drivers for police contact, crime rates, poverty, and such. The multi-level regression analysis found that higher per capita rates of Black persons experience St. Louis County Police Department's use of force relative to white persons was not fully explained by those neighborhood characteristics, crime rates, and those other factors. As a result of the analysis and everything, CPE made some recommendations to St. Louis County Police Department. We gave them 10 actionable steps to enhance the department's commitment to fair and equitable policing. I'll talk about a few of those recommendations. The first is around data. We recommend that they collect all data elements for pedestrian stops identified in our analytical framework. That's not currently done by the department. It's important to collect and analyze these data points to really get a full understanding of stops in the community and how that's impacting different groups. We also recommended they clearly define reportable use of force. We recommended that St. Louis County Police Department require supervisors to review vehicle stops in a timely fashion. Again, just ensuring accountability on the part of their officers. We recommended that St. Louis County adopt policy explicitly requiring officers to intervene if they see fellow officers using excessive force. We also made some recommendations around working with local LGBTQ plus communities to implement policy changes and on some general orders that the department had. Some of the recommendations that St. Louis County has already kind of adopted or had in place. We made some recommendations for maybe some stronger language and that sort of thing, but we recognize that St. Louis Police Department, County Police Department had prohibited the use of chokeholds and also have policies warning them about the risk of positional asphyxia. So we want to commend the St. Louis County Police Department for their proactive participation in participating in the National Justice Database project and using that as a tool to enhance equity within their department and the policing practices they pursue. In conclusion, we encourage that the St. Louis County Police Department share these results with the people of St. Louis County in an effort to enhance transparency and accountability and to support community partnership in producing equity and public safety. The analysis of this report should be viewed as a resource for steering reforms and as a benchmark against which future progress can be measured. So this really is the first step. The report is the first step in moving forward on some of these programs. The hope is that we can partner with St. Louis County, continue this relationship, and see how disparities are impacted over time based on changes the department has made themselves and changes based on the recommendations we've made at CPE. And I'm sorry, I'm not terribly familiar with this. system here. I'm trying to figure out how to unshare my process.
You got it. Thanks for that presentation. Does anybody have questions? Well, hearing none, I'm going to conclude that your presentation was completely comprehensive. Although I do know that the report has a lot of information in it that we have been reviewing and that we're happy to share with the St. Louis County community and incorporate in our continuous improvement efforts and our plan that will be discussed later in this meeting that we are developing to incorporate some changes into our department. So on behalf of the board and the entire department, thank you for your team's efforts and sharing this with us and conducting the analysis.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity again to speak with you all about this.
Wonderful. Well, I will move on to our next agenda item, which is a Police Academy Code of Conduct. And the thought in putting this item on the agenda is to have a discussion or perhaps present a question to the department about whether there is a code of conduct for academy instructors, and if not, whether instituting one would be a recommended action item. So I will open it up to discussion. I can't tell if somebody is trying to speak or not.
No.
Okay. Okay.
Cam, you got anything?
Yeah.
Board, I'm Captain Jerry Kelly. I'm with the County Municipal Police Academy. Just to let you know, we had a meeting with the chief and the deputy chief over an issue that took place about a month ago. And in moving forward, we've decided that one of the things we're going to have to do is address the contract that we have with contracted instructors. There is language inside the contract that addresses this. However, it is a little bit vague, so we're going to make that more specific to the classes being taught and to the material that is going to be presented. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to have a code of conduct memorandum that when the instructor arrives to teach, we're going to have that instructor read the memorandum, and then we're going to have them sign the memorandum that outlines the expectations of the academy. After that, then I will actually bring the instructor into my office and have a conference with them as to, again, what the expectations of the academy.
I think that's a great idea. Does any other member of the board have a thought or comment or question?
So I was wondering if you, in your conversation with those contractors, will specifically address what kind of background those persons might have related to racial equity.
Ma'am, actually, we vet the contracted instructors. We vet the lesson plans as well as the objectives of the lesson plans. All that information is, after all that, the information is sent to post for their inspection and also approved.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part. You said, and also.
Oh, we send all the information to the post commission for their inspection as well as their approval.
All right, thank you. I guess I do have some concerns about the not only the contractors, but and this may be a discussion we'll have at another time, the content of their instructional programs. And so we can talk about that at another time, but I just wanted to mention that because I think they do relate to one another. Not just what they're teaching, but how they are delivering that service.
Again, when we go over the instructor's credentials, we make sure that they are an expert in the field. And once we get, again, like I said, once we get the information, we go ahead and we send that information to post for their approval and inspection.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I will thank you for the update. And we will move on to our next agenda item, which is an update on the Teneo report and the work that we have done following our receipt of that report.
Okay, I think I got myself unmuted. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, yes.
Oh, thank you very much, ma'am, Ms. Schwerin and board. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. As you know, not only did we engage in the process with Teneo, but we also had a Cpe report going on as well, and some other requests for and recommendations for changes in policy and procedure within the department. So we basically combined a lot of the recommendations in these recent reports. And we saw overarching themes in a lot of the audits and reports we had done, specifically on diversity and inclusion among our employees, consistent minority hiring, and increasing community engagement. So we took the 97 points that were mentioned in the Teneo report, and we addressed those by whether we had started on them, they were in progress, or they were completed. And all this information is in the packet for you. And we saw, again, overarching themes common to a lot of the reports. So we decided that the best way to address these was to go back to the department's strategic plan that we did in 2018 and amend it. And the strategic plan basically consists of 4 areas, which are to reduce crime, increase organizational accountability, increase organizational capacity, and leverage technology. So a lot of the recommendations by Teneo and Cpe fit into these categories. So then we developed a plan to amend our strategic plan before it was due at the end of 2022 to work on these initiatives. And we engaged a lot of the immediate recommendations of Teneo into these 4 core areas for the strategic plan. And again, this information is in your packet, but we really looked at the things that we could do immediately. And since receiving the Teneo report, we have our immediate goals have been to address the recruiting issue, codify discrimination through the D&I unit, work on employee wellness. As you know, we established a wellness unit, and then the Jennings 120-day project, which you will get a report on shortly. The short-term goal was to work on promotions and the promotion policy, and reporting and investigating major disciplinary issues and issues of violations within the department through the Bureau of Professional Standards. One of the overarching themes in these reports too was more shared intelligence and more direct contact with the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, which we have been doing, and community outreach. And as you know, we developed the Bureau of Community Engagement, and there is a community outreach unit specifically now located in that, who is working on several forward-moving projects. A long-term, again, overarching theme was the issue with the property control unit, upgrade our CAD system, which is near end of life, and increase special response unit staffing and body-worn cameras. So we took all of these, fit them into the areas that they believed represented them in the strategic plan, and have been moving forward on these items. One of the things you brought up, ma'am, was the money that we might be receiving or that might be allocated to St. Louis County. So what I did was I took the Teneo plan and all the recommendations they made, and have begun to put a monetary figure as to what it would cost to create these forms of change within the police department and to do some of the things they mentioned. I have not yet finished with that, but I wanted to be prepared in case we were lucky enough to be a part of that money that is being given to St. Louis County and the city and different police departments. So I am creating a list over and above the current budget of actionable items that we might be able to include in there for potential purpose to address some of these issues they brought up. But we have moved forward on several items. Several of them we've already completed, and that, of course, is in the information I gave you. But we have moved forward significantly on a lot of the recommendations and requests brought to us by the Teneo report, also issues and concerns brought to us by the FOP and the Ethical Society, and also the Department of Justice report. Is when compared again, a lot of overarching themes, a lot of the same things being said, and it was time to move forward on these items instead of just getting the report. So we have made significant progress on a lot of these areas. Do you have any questions? That was just kind of a general overview, but as I said, most of this information of what we've done and where we've gone is written out in several handouts that I gave you.
Thank you. Any questions? I have one. I think this is great, and I'm glad that we have a to-do list. Are we going to put deadlines and expectations of timing and complete dates on some of these action items?
Yes, ma'am. And the way we divided them into 3 sections. Immediate, which means we're either already doing it or it's done. Short term, which is 6 months out, and then long term, which is, a year or longer. Like, for instance, a long-term item would be a new property control building. That is a sizable capital outlay that we have to define funding for. But some of the changes in the recommendations of Teneo, some of the changes are changes in our policy. Those are we're currently working on now. Any policy change, as you know, we have policy changes have to go through stakeholder groups here, but I'm trying to institute that we get those policies changed and back within at least a 6-month period, because some of them are hanging out there too long, and we need to get going on those things. So yes, we divided into immediate, short, and long-term goals, and put a period of time on them to get them done, because otherwise they could just either be forgotten or just hang out there and not get done. So yes, we have codified all of them, and they are listed by doability, and of course a lot depends on funding as well. So, but to answer your question, yes.
Thank you. So am I understanding correctly? From now to 6 months is immediate, 6 to 12 months is short term, and a year or longer are the long term. Any other questions? Okay, well, I think as part of the Teneo update subject, we had asked for an update on the Jennings collaboration. So is that ready to go?
Yes, ma'am. Lieutenant Colonel Ludwig and Captain Law of the Jennings Precinct are going to give you a presentation on that.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. You'll see I have Captain Law with me here in the room. So specifically for Commissioner Banks, who wasn't here at the initiation of this collaboration, if you have any questions as we go through this, please feel free to ask them. If I can't answer them, I'm quite certain that Captain Law can. So just as a little bit of background about the initiative, back in 2020, I think everybody can recognize how challenging a year 2020 was for us, but specifically to crime trends within the county. We started to see a significant increase in aggravated assaults. So the precinct captains were beginning to work on that. And when I say that, I mean the precinct captains up in the North County precinct, Captain Law in Jennings, and the captain in the Central County precinct, specifically the East End. We're working on initiatives to help kind of address that spike in aggravated assaults. Around the same time, the Teneo consultants started their review of the police department. And during the course of those conversations and interviews, specifically for me, talking to Chief Dan Oates, it was suggested that a joint collaboration between St. Louis City and that Jennings Walnut Park area would be a good idea. And he made some suggestions as to what that would look like based on some of his experiences doing assessments in other parts of the country. So when I reached out to Captain Law, Captain Cunningham to talk about this initiative, they were already well underway planning how to respond to this, and the two kind of married up nicely, which resulted in what you saw the beginning of in October, which was that Jennings Walnut Park collaboration initiative. So what we did is we kind of took the statistics starting about the middle of October, and we kind of cut it off in the first part of February. So what you're going to hear, the statistics that you have in your packets that I included, I apologize for not being as tech savvy as some and being able to throw them up on the board. But in your packet, you have kind of a summary of the statistics from the middle part of October through February 5th. And let me be clear about something. We cut the statistical time period off on February 5th. We have not stopped working in that area on February 5th. That work continues today. So what you're looking at in your packet in terms of the statistics, I think are fairly telling. 157 felony arrests, 116 guns seized. Overall Part 1 crimes were down by 33% when compared to the 120 days leading up to the time that we started this initiative, and down, I believe, let me make sure I'm right, 29% same period from the year before. Specifically, aggravated assaults. That's what we were targeting. From the previous 120 days, we were down 51%. So we knew we could impact violent crime by surging assets into the region, and that's what we were able to do. I think more telling, kind of to talk about successes of the initiative, would be to talk about kind of the PR side of this. It's no, I'm not telling the commission anything that you don't know, commissioners, that we got off to kind of a rocky start in the media on this, and it created some problems for us, at least with our community engagement piece, and it made things a lot more difficult than they probably should have been at the start of this. But I bring that up only to say at the end of the initiative, when Captain Law was in front of the Jennings City Council, and he was briefing them on what we're talking about right now, the support from the community on the initiative was almost unparalleled in that region. The citizens came out and talked to their members of the council. They were completely supportive of the initiative. I think that's an important thing to note. It's important to build on. The second thing that I'd mention when it comes to that is during the course of the 120 days, as active as we were in the region, we generated 0 citizen complaints as a result of this initiative. So I'm very proud of the effort, not only internally from Captain Law and his people in Jennings, everybody from special operations, criminal investigation, pretty much every piece of the St. Louis County Police Department in some way, shape, or form was involved in this initiative, and they all responded like I knew that they would. But we also had help from our partners. So we had help from St. Louis City, we had help from our federal partners, we had help from the Jennings leadership. So everything kind of came together to show the numbers that I showed you just now. Kind of one thing that I want to hit on, it wasn't perfect. We learned some lessons along the way. And the Teneo report came out late in the initiative too, and there were a lot of opportunities within that Teneo report to incorporate things that they recommended into our efforts moving forward. So the stats that you see that run through February 5th, like I said, the initiative continues. We've taken this concept and we've enhanced it so now that we can go anywhere in the county. So we have a strike force, and we have people involved in real time that are able to take this pilot project, apply the concepts and the lessons that we learned, and now take it anywhere in the county in almost real time. And we've been doing that since February 22nd. So the initiative continues. Since the 22nd, we've had an additional 23 guns that we've taken off the street, an additional 28 felony arrests, and we've seized a significant amount of fentanyl and methamphetamine in the process. So it's going to be important moving forward to talk about this, but kind of when it comes to the Jennings initiative, it was a 3-pronged plan. It was a crime prevention plan, it was a community engagement plan, it was a neighborhood stabilization plan. And due in large part to the pandemic and some of the negative media attention early on, the community engagement and the stabilization piece took kind of a hit. So as we move forward, those pieces will start in earnest as we open the world back up. And I have Captain Law here, and I'd like to just take a minute of your time, please, to let him explain what that looks like, because these are concepts that are somewhat foreign to policing. We know that we can send assets into a region and we can stabilize that region from a crime prevention standpoint, but that's just one piece. And in order to be successful long-term, it requires ideas like what Captain Law came up with the Jennings School District. So I'd like him to talk about that just real briefly.
Thank you, Colonel. When we started this project, our main goal was, we know we can go and reduce crime, but how do we keep crime limited for a prolonged period of time? And we both agreed that getting involved in the community and having the stakeholders in the community be involved. So we reached out to the Jennings School Board and the superintendent, Dr. Art McCoy, who was a fantastic partner, and the clergy with the main contact was Reverend Burton. And we've formulated a plan to get involved with the Jennings School District, where we would take those kids that are not necessarily going to school all the time and try to intervene at some point. So it did take a little hit, and it took a little time to get back on track. And I have a meeting this Friday with Dr. Knight, the new superintendent of Jennings, and we're going to get that format back in plan. We're going to redefine the plan and get it going and a curriculum going by hopefully the beginning of school next year. And the buy-in has been fantastic, and we're getting the business community involved as well. We have Mr. Estelle from McDonald's. He's a Jennings business owner, and he wants to be involved in this. And luckily, Commissioner Banks was gracious enough to introduce me to that and make that connection. And that's going to be an important part of this project as well going forward. So all those things together is going to help Jennings in the long run.
Thank you.
So can I ask a question? I just wanted to ask a question about specific kinds of interventions in the school district that you're planning for in the fall.
Sure. So we've reached out to many aspects like CAPEL through the St. Louis County Police Department. We're going to look into psychologists and many aspects of our community engagement piece that the chief has now created. We're going to try to get a curriculum with chess and all those types of after-school events that are going to go through the Jennings school districts in their different schools. And we're going to try to come up with a plan to have an after-school project that lasts 2 to 3 hours, Monday through Friday after school, to keep kids in school and keep those kids from staying home and not going.
All right, thank you.
And the final thing I'd like to say is, I talked a little bit about the effort moving forward. The one thing that we recognize from this initiative and kind of some of the reoccurring themes throughout the Teneo report are how vital that community engagement piece is in this effort and how quickly things can go sideways if we don't get that right. So, I thought personally, when we first started the Jennings initiative, there was a lot going on. We were all part of that when it happened, and we understand kind of why that happened. But I felt pretty good moving into that project, and it just, it went sideways quickly. And a lot of that was because we weren't necessarily on top of all the stakeholders the way that we needed to be. And we learned that lesson. And now I think moving forward, as we roll out the strike force's participation in our anti-violent crime initiative, our gun initiative, things that are all recommended in the Teneo report, we recognize that, and that's going to become a vital piece. It's going to become just as important as what our research analysts pull together, our crime stats, where we target our efforts. That community engagement piece to help drive those efforts is going to be just as important to developing that strategy on a weekly basis as anything else that goes into that process. So I think it's important that the board understand that that's our focus moving forward and how we develop these initiatives into 2021. So that's really all I have. Well, we'd be happy to answer any questions about this or anything moving forward if you have any.
I'd like to commend Captain Law on particularly the community outreach and engagement piece of this. I was happy to introduce him to the McDonald's operator in Jennings, who's one of the major business owners there, who is now committed to work with Captain Law on doing some things in there. And I think the community engagement piece is a huge part, as important as a strategy going forward. I want to commend him on that.
Yes, sir. I couldn't agree more.
Any other questions? Well, thank you both for your presentation and your time and your commitment to this effort.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it.
Now, we have several meeting minutes to approve. I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the minutes of the meetings on January 13th, January 28th, February 12th, and March 2nd of this year.
So I move that we approve the minutes from January 13th, January 28th, February 12th, and March 2nd.
I would second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Hearing all ayes, I will note those approved. Are there any letters and communications for the board?
Excuse me, did you leave out the amended minutes for December 16th?
Yes. We'll,
Okay, we'll get that later.
yes, yes.
Thanks. Thank you.
Are there any letters and communications?
I did receive a packet of letters. I have not read them yet, so I'll report on those at a later meeting.
Okay, thank you. I'll hold you to it.
Okay.
Any old business? Hearing none, I'll move on to new business. We have many contracts to review and vote on. I will go in batches of, let's see, 3 or 4. I'll read them out. I'll open the floor to any questions or comments, and then we'll vote on them. The first batch of contracts is a police services agreement with the Missouri Department of Public Safety for a reimbursement for care subscription costs. The second contract is a professional services agreement with Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission to authorize funds to the department to be used in a statewide transportation improvement program, on-call work zone enforcement. The third is a professional services agreement with Jefferson County Sheriff's Department for the 2021 State Cybercrime Grant. And the fourth is a professional services agreement with Maryland Heights Police Department for the 2021 State Cybercrime Grant. Any comments, questions, or concerns? May I have a motion to approve these contracts?
I move for approval of the contracts.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
The contracts will be authorized. The next batch is a professional services agreement with Patrick E. Horney for a municipal St. Louis County and Municipal Police Academy program instructor development course. The second is a professional services agreement with the same individual for an academy class entitled First Line Supervision. And the third contract is a professional services agreement with Jeff Burke for a police academy course entitled Private Security Original and Renewal Training. May I have a motion to approve these contracts? Oh, I'm sorry. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Okay, may I have a motion to approve these contracts?
I move that the aforementioned contracts be approved.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those contracts will be approved. The next batch is a includes a professional services agreement for IXII Group to provide an academy course titled Communications Training Officer, a professional services agreement with Training Force USA LLC to approve an academy course titled Use of Force Analysis. The next contract is a professional services agreement with Training Force USA to provide an academy course titled Serving with Honor and Integrity in the 21st Century. The fourth is a professional services agreement with Training Force USA to provide an academy course titled Leadership and Effective Coaching for First Line Supervisors. Any discussion? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve these contracts?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
These contracts shall be approved. The next batch includes a professional services agreement with Training Force USA for an academy course titled De-escalation Tactics and Skills for Officer Safety, a professional services agreement with Vista Law Enforcement Training and Consulting for an academy course titled Baton, Pepper Spray, and Taser Training. The third is a professional services agreement with Vista Law Enforcement Training and Consulting LLC for an academy course titled Policing in the 21st Century, Fair and Impartial Perspective. And the last is a professional services agreement with Vista Law Enforcement Training and Consulting for an academy course titled Employees Preparation for Retirement. Any discussion? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve these contracts?
So
I move
moved.
that. Go ahead.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. These contracts shall be approved. I have a professional services agreement for LOCKUP to provide an academy course, Law Enforcement Active Diffusion Strategies and Tactical Options Instructor course, a professional services agreement, Public Grants and Training Initiatives for an academy course titled Narcotics and Street Crimes in a New Era, and a professional services agreement with Stephen Gerard Mollering for an academy course titled Combat Tactics and Self-Defense for Law Enforcement, a professional services agreement with the Adaptive Way LLC for an academy course titled Basic Field Training Officer Certification, and a professional services agreement with Teneo and the Regional Business Council for Teneo to provide the St. Louis County Police Department with consulting services at no cost to the county. Do I have any discussion on these contracts? Hearing none, I will ask for a motion to approve these contracts.
I move that the aforementioned contracts be approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. These contracts are approved. The next item on our agenda is or the next item on our new business are 3 general orders. Chief, are we going to receive a summary of these general orders from anybody today?
Yes, Lieutenant Hampton is going to give you a summary.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner. Kind of the highlights of these 3 new general orders. The adult abuse procedures was recommended by our domestic violence unit. They had several new standards that were mandated by the state of Missouri. So we needed to add some updates to this general order based on what they need to do as far as their investigations go. Some new online resources. As you know, the community is very supportive of taking care of adult abuse procedures, and so they have a lot more resources that we wanted to add. And then one of the biggest changes in this one was the state of Missouri changed the definition for juvenile offenders, where they used to be 17 years of age and now they're 18 years of age. So we had to make sure that was added to this general order as well. Do you want me to keep going, or you want to do each one separately?
We can do each one separately.
Okay.
Is there any discussion on the revised general order 21-065? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve this general order?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
This general order is approved.
The continuing education and training general order, again, we updated it. This one is based on a lot of new updates and requirements for CALEA. As you know, we are CALEA certified. In fact, we're going through our first year inspection on the new time right now, but they had some new additional requirements that came out within the last year, specifically about mandatory mental health training. Our department has always provided mental health training on a 3-year cycle. CALEA now wants an update every single year, so we've added that to this general order. Post requirements have changed slightly over the last year, so we wanted to make sure that we had the current post requirements. So we put in a hyperlink in the general order so that officers can see the changes to post immediately, so that we don't have to keep changing the general order every time there's a new training from post. So we added that. The promotional training, the promotional policy that was approved a short time ago added some caveats for training for new supervisors or potential supervisors. So we had to make sure that was mentioned in the continuing education general order. And then a couple updates about our firearms training, making sure we have mandated processes for making sure everybody qualifies with their firearms. We just updated that a little bit as well.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, I will ask for a motion to approve this general order.
I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The general order is approved. And our last one, General Order 21-122.
Yes, ma'am. Interference with custody previously had been a special order. We made it a mandatory general order now for department-wide. We got, again, some new guidance from our domestic violence unit. They needed to update some things similar to what we had in the adult abuse general order a few minutes ago. Some of the specific things that involved interference with child custody. Some new issues came out, and we had to make sure we updated that, specifically interference with custody, parental kidnapping, child abduction, making sure that everybody was aware of the updates in the state law for those 3 specific charges. And our domestic violence unit entertains a lot of questions from officers on the street about scenario type situations. If I have this, what should I do to make this happen? So we produced a flow chart, which is an attachment here to kind of help guide the officers so they can try to work through that workflow process. And then, of course, if they have questions beyond that, then they can call a detective in our domestic violence unit. But we just wanted to make sure that that was a handout or a helpful guide for them so that they can kind of work through the process of our interference with custody. As you know, this is a very complicated issue when we're dealing with court orders and different things like that. And one parent says one thing and the other parent says something completely different. So we wanted to try to streamline it as much as possible and hopefully help out the officers that are on the street that have to deal with these issues.
Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve this general order?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The general order is approved. Next item on our agenda is the public forum. Do we have any comments from the public?
No, no, we don't have any comments today.
Thank you. I will now ask for a motion to go into closed meeting. The Board of Police Commissioners may vote to go into closed meeting for review of claims and lawsuits involving the Police Department, Section 610.021 RSMO and Section 114.0201 SLCRO. Discussion of employee and personnel matters, Section 610.0213 and 13 RSMO and Sections 114.0203 and 13 SLCRO, and an update on union negotiations, Section 610.0219 RSMO and Section 114.0209 SLCRO, and specifications for competitive bidding, Section 610.02111 RSMO and Section 114.02011 SLCRO.
I move that we move into a closed session.
Second.
Amy, will you please call roll?
Commissioner Banks,
Here.
Commissioner Gartner,
Yes.
Commissioner Hassler,
Yes.
and Commissioner Schwerin.
Yes. We will now go into closed session. One more piece of business to conduct. We are going to vote on the approval of the amended minutes from our December 16th, 2020 meeting. May I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Motion to
Move.
approve the minutes.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those meetings are approved. And now I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Amy, will you please call roll?
Commissioner Banks,
Yes.
Commissioner Gartner,
Yes.
Commissioner Hassler,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwerin.
Yes. Thank you very much, everybody. We look forward to seeing you at our next meeting.